The subject of this database lesson is the distinct keyword in SQL select statements. Our objective today is to find out what the distinct keyword is, what it allows us to do, and when it's appropriate to use it. So when we're working with databases, often we'll have tables, and we do our best to design databases to avoid duplicate data, and we use constraints to avoid duplicate data as much as we can, but that doesn't mean that we don't get duplicate data. For example, if I have a table with a bunch of personal information about people in it, and I open it up to, say, a web application where people can register with my website, and that data gets stored inside of my database, if 10 people all from the same city, let's say Halifax, if they all register, then what they're going to do is when they come on the form to say what city do you live in, all 10 of them are going to type in Halifax, and so all 10 of those records in the underlying database are going to have the exact same value. We can't avoid that type of duplication. The issue comes when we start querying this data and we see all kinds of duplicate values. But depending on the type of questions that we're trying to answer with our queries, sometimes we actually want to have the duplicates and other times we do not. So where the distinct keyword comes in is it allows us to essentially say, in my select list, I only want to see the unique values no matter how many of them occur. So let's jump into an example here that'll show us how the distinct keyword might work. In order to do this, I already have built a query here. You can see this is all data coming from my customer table, and I've chosen as my columns in my select list the first and last name fields, the city, and the country. Now, what I'd like to bring your attention to here is just the data. So we see the names, but more importantly, we can see in the city and country columns, we have a number of records which have duplicate values within the column. So Prague has 2 records. If I look down here, there's several Brazil records, there's multiple USA records, Canada, etc. These are examples of data in our table that we can't avoid having duplicates in. The cities and countries, the data was determined by the fact that these people lived in these places, so they entered this data. Just to make this as clear as possible data-wise, I'm actually going to put a where clause and an order by clause on here. So I'm going to add a where clause here to say where the country is equal to USA, and then I'm going to sort the data that I have there by country and also by city. So when I run this, you can see I now have only the 13 records from the USA, and we are sorted first by country, which happen to all be the same values because of our where clause, and then it's sorted alphabetically by city. So the question that I'm going to ask that our query should answer is, let's say I have the requirement to say, show me a list of all of the cities in the USA in which we have customers that have bought our product. So if I look at this data here, I can see I already have that data showing, but let's make this even more explicit by removing the names of the people and rerunning the query. This gives us a list of all 13 records that are from the USA with the cities they're in. But what I'd like to bring your attention to is Mountain View USA has a duplicate value in here. Now if I just go back by hitting Control Z and putting my first name and last name back in here, you can see the reason I have 2 duplicates is because 2 different customers who happen to both be from the same town of Mountain View, they are both registered as my customers. So they show up with duplicate values because they're both from the same town. But the question that I want to answer has nothing actually to do with customers directly. My requirement was not to get a list of the customers who live in the cities in USA, just give me a list of the cities. Maybe it's for the marketing department. They want to know where to do their targeted marketing or something along those lines. So I'm actually going to remove my names yet again and rerun the query. So I bring your attention back to our duplicate Mountain View city here. So just by simply using the sorting and the country criteria here in the where clause, I still have duplicate values in here. Now, this is just a simple example, but just imagine if there was more data in here, I might have 200 people from Boston, and I might have 600 people from New York, and those would all appear as individual cities, which were all duplicates. So that's where our distinct keyword comes in. What it allows us to do is it is always tied to the select list, and immediately after the word select, you put in the word distinct. Now what that says, this is not applying it directly to the city here. This is saying I want my select list to have distinct values. In other words, all unique values. So when the results set is being made, what it does is anything in my select list, so all of the columns in my select list, if there are anywhere all of the values in all of the displayed columns all match for a single or for multiple records, it will actually eliminate the duplicates. So let's run this and see what happens. So we have 2 mountain views. When I run this with a distinct keyword, I now only have 12 records, and you can see I have only 1 instance of mountain view. Now, this didn't change our data in the tables. I still have the other records in there. It's just saying I only want the unique values. So it essentially eliminated the duplicates. Now, the key thing to understand about the distinct keyword is it applies to every field in the select list. So if I did go back and add in my first name and last name fields again, what's going to happen is, because these do not have distinct values in all 4 columns for any one particular row, when I run this, you will see I now have duplicates back in here. I'm still using distinct, but because all 4 of these values, Frank Harris from Mountain View, USA, is not the same in all 4 columns as Dan Miller from Mountain View, USA, it does not eliminate this because it is not a duplicate in all of the fields that are in my select list. For this reason, you would basically never see a primary key field in your select list when you were doing when you were intending to use distinct, because by its nature, primary key has unique values for every single record. So you would always get all of the records that were in the table or that met the criteria for your query. So the power of the distinct keyword is that it allows me to pretty quickly and easily ask broad questions of my data. So for example, if the marketing department came to me and said, hey, all of our customers, what countries do they live in across the world? And I just want a list of just the countries. I could just say, okay, let's change my select list here to say, select the distinct list of countries from our table. I'll remove my where clause, and I'm just going to order by country. When I run this query, I now have a list of each unique country. You'll notice there are only 24 records in here, even though I have a lot more customers than that, and we saw earlier there were a lot of duplicates. This gives me the unique list of countries. One last point I'd like to make here is, in previous lessons I was indicating that your select list and your order by or your where clauses are often separate, and they don't really have any direct impact on each other. That is not always the case. So when we put in the distinct keyword into a select list, that actually puts some limitations on the country or on the fields that we can use. In this particular case, if I tried to also say sort by city, in other words, a column that is not in my select list, when I run this now, I'm actually going to receive an error. So by having the distinct in here, you're limiting what fields that you can use in some of the other clauses. The short rule of thumb answer to this is essentially it has to, you can only order by things that are in the actual select list when you're using distinct. The pause task for this lesson is going to go a little bit differently from previous lessons. I'm going to have a harder version and an easier version. The way this is going to work is after I stop speaking, please pause the video. If you're interested in trying the harder version, you will at that point see everything that's on screen now, which will be your task and all of the information that you would need. If you wish to get a little bit of a leg up on it, where you get a hint which will move you forward a little bit quicker, then what I'll get you to do is just continue until you see an additional hint appear on the screen, and then pause the video. So the task here is to write a select statement to discover how many different combinations of songwriting credits there are in our database for songs by the band Kiss. Welcome back. What you're seeing on screen here is the solution to the task that I gave you. I'm just going to walk you through this a little bit just to hopefully help you understand exactly what's going on here. So if I remove my distinct keyword here for a second and just replace it with a star, we'll look at our data. So this is saying any songs from the track table from these two particular albums. Album ID is a foreign key to the album table, so that's saying what songs are on these particular albums. And then I'm ordering by composer so we can see. So this is saying Ace Frehley wrote these couple of songs, Gene Simmons only wrote these few songs, etc. You can see there's a lot of duplicates. That's why I had my distinct keyword in here on the composer field only, to give me the unique combinations of songwriters for their songs. Now, if you did the easy version of this task, I gave you the hint saying the two album IDs that are by Kiss are album 37 and album 126. However, if you did the harder version, you would have not had that hint, and you would have had to go and look those up yourself. So how would we actually do this? And by the way, this is a process you will often go through when you start building larger queries. You need to know what data you're working with first. So I'm going to drop this down a couple of lines, and I'm actually going to write a couple of supporting queries which aren't part of my actual solution, but I need the data from them. So first off, I need to know what artist is Kiss, and that data is contained inside my artist table, which has a list of all of the artists and bands and singers, etc. So I'm going to write a quick one to say select everything from artist where the name field, which I can look up over here if I don't know exactly what it is equal to Kiss. When I run this particular query, this set tells me two pieces of information. Yes, Kiss is the band and I found it, but more importantly, their primary key for artist ID is 52. Now I can then go and say, in a second query, select everything from the album table, which is an artist is going to put out albums, so there is a relationship between them. And if I go in here and just very quickly look at all the data in the album table, I can see I have an album ID, a title, and I have an artist ID, which is the foreign key. So I looked that up before and I saw artist ID 52. So my second query here is going to say select all of the records from the album table where the artist ID, in other words the foreign key, is equal to that value, which is 52. When I run just this query, I then can see the two albums that meet that criteria. The album called Greatest Kiss and an unplugged live album that they did. So I can tell that these were by artist ID 52 because of the foreign key values. I see the titles, but then now in here I see the two album IDs, the primary keys for those were album ID number 37 and 126. So that gives me the album ID fields that are in here in my track table, which tells us which songs are on an album. Now, this is a very good example of showing you how foreign key data actually relates between tables, and this is the type of thing you have to understand very strongly so that you can look up this data as you're going. So once I figured out the album IDs that I want, then it's simply a matter of going into my track table, putting the two album IDs in the where clause with an OR operator to give me both of them, and then what I said was give me all of the unique songwriting combinations. So I used the distinct keyword to remove all the duplicates and put it just on the composer field, which then gave me my final result set, which is these 19 records here. You can see they did a cover of a Rolling Stones tune here, but that's probably on the live album if I remember right. So I hope you've learned something about the distinct keyword. It's very useful when you have that type of query to do, and I'll catch you in the next lesson.